The first 3 hours of the flight were smooth. Calm skies, quiet passengers. Then turbulence struck, and moments later, a chilling announcement crackled through the speakers. "We need your attention. The plane is now under our control." Ibrahim Traoré, hidden under a baseball cap and sunglasses, sat quietly in seat 178. No one on board knew that this man, dressed simply in a dark shirt, blue jeans, and sporty shoes, was in fact the transitional leader of Burkina Faso, returning home discreetly after secret diplomatic meetings in Paris. Now he was one of 182 hostages on a hijacked Air France flight from Paris to Ouagadougou. The hijackers had taken control and were negotiating from the cockpit $10 million and the release of 3 prisoners from La Santé prison in France. That was their condition. But had they known who sat quietly in 178, their demands might have been much, much higher. The plane, which had started as a calm afternoon journey, filled with French tourists, business travelers, and Burkina-Faso citizens returning home, was now spiraling into crisis. As the aircraft entered Malian airspace, a flight attendant noticed 4 men suddenly rise. At first, it seemed like an argument. Then she saw it. A gun. Her tray crashed to the floor, hot tea spilling everywhere. "Nobody move!" one man barked, his French laced with an Arabic accent. "We've taken control of the plane. Follow instructions and no one will be hurt." From years of military and security training, Traoré knew these first moments were critical. Guns were drawn, fear was spreading, and chaos could explode at any second. 2 hijackers rushed the cockpit. The other 2 spread out, one at the front of economy, the other at the back. "We will collect all phones, tablets, and electronic devices," announced the man at the rear. "Do not resist, or the consequences will be severe." Quickly, Traoré slipped his phone into the side pocket of his seat before they could gather everything. The hijackers were scrambling to establish control, but it was still disorderly. One of the men returned from the cockpit and addressed the passengers. "Our demands are simple: $10 million and the release of our 3 brothers from La Santé. Meet these demands and you will all return home safely." Traoré studied the man's eyes. They were tense, anxious, not the eyes of hardened terrorists, but of men driven by ideology and desperation. Hours dragged on. The plane veered off course, circling over Mali as the pilot, under their orders, kept it airborne to buy time for negotiations. Around Traoré, fear and exhaustion took hold. An elderly Burkinabe woman trembled beside him. A mother calmed her 2 children a few rows ahead. Across the aisle, 3 French businessmen whispered nervously. "Don't worry," Traoré whispered to the woman beside him. "Everything will be all right." "You're Burkinabe, aren't you, my son?" she asked with tearful eyes. "Yes, mother, we will all return home," he replied firmly. Suddenly, one hijacker grabbed a middle-aged Frenchman and dragged him toward the cockpit. "Negotiations aren't moving fast enough," he snarled. "Maybe if we send a hostage, they'll listen more carefully." Traoré knew he had to act. He could reveal his identity and offer himself as a more valuable hostage, potentially saving lives, but risking a massive diplomatic crisis. Or he could wait. Instead, he chose a third option. He stood up and spoke calmly, but with authority. "Stop. Negotiations take time. Rash decisions will only make things worse for everyone." The hijacker swung his gun toward Traoré, eyes narrowing. "Who are you to tell me what to do?" "Just a passenger," Traoré replied evenly. "But I understand how negotiations work. Resorting to violence will make it harder to get what you want." The hijacker hesitated, studying him. "Why are you so confident? Who are you?" "I've worked as a diplomat," Traoré answered truthfully. "I know how agreements are made. If you want, I can help you negotiate." After a tense exchange among the hijackers, their leader finally nodded. "Okay, diplomat, Show us your skill. Come to the cockpit. Traoré rose, calm and measured, walking past anxious passengers. The elderly woman whispered, "God protect you, my son." Inside the cockpit, the pilot and co-pilot sat tense and exhausted. One hijacker manned the radio. "Who is this?" asked the French negotiator on the other end. "A diplomat," the leader replied. "He's going to help with the negotiation." "Is this a trick?" the negotiator demanded. "No trick," Traoré replied steadily. "I'm a passenger who wants a peaceful resolution." He turned to the hijackers. "Your goal is the release of 3 prisoners and money, correct?" "Yes," the leader confirmed. "Our brothers, Malik Al-Zim, Riyad Hamoudi, and Omar Banani, they were accused of helping the Tuareg uprising in Mali. They're not terrorists, they're freedom fighters." Traoré recognized the names. Accused of attacking French military facilities, they had become symbols of resistance against French neocolonialism in West Africa. "And the money?" Traoré asked. "To continue the struggle," said the leader, "until France's presence in Africa ends." Traoré understood their motivations. He shared frustrations about foreign exploitation of Africa, but not their methods. "I am Ibrahim Traoré," he finally said quietly, "leader of Burkina Faso. I have negotiated with world powers. You will not succeed this way." The hijackers froze. Their expressions shifted: shock, disbelief, realization. "I can help bring your cause to the world stage," Traoré continued, "without bloodshed, without destroying your own future." At that moment, the radio crackled. "Youssef," the negotiator said, addressing the leader, "we're evaluating your demands. We need more time to build trust. As a sign of good faith, release the children and elderly. We'll arrange fuel for your landing in Bamako." Youssef hesitated, glanced at his men, then nodded. "Fine, we'll release them in Bamako, but we want fuel first." As the plane adjusted course toward Bamako, Traoré stayed calm, calculating. The window of opportunity to resolve the crisis peacefully was opening, and now he had to make sure it didn't slam shut. "You're different," the pilot murmured, eyes narrowing as he studied Trey's composure. "You speak like a man trained for conflict." Trey offered no answer. Instead, a faint smile curved across his lips, a quiet acknowledgement wrapped in mystery. Moments later, Yusuf and his companions strode purposefully back into the cockpit. "We accept your plan," Yusuf announced firmly. "We'll alter our course towards Niger. We'll stay airborne and release the children." "And how exactly do you intend to release them mid-flight?" Trey asked smoothly, his voice calm but piercing. "What do you mean, how?" Yusuf shot back, a flicker of irritation dancing across his features. "I mean, how will you release them from the sky?" Trey pressed on. "Will you hurl them out with parachutes?" A shadow of uncertainty swept over Yusuf's face. It was evident. This crucial detail had slipped his mind. "Perhaps there's a better way to build trust," Trey suggested gently, a measured tone guiding his words. "For instance, you could film a video showing that the children and elderly passengers are unharmed. Send that instead." Yusuf weighed the proposal and gave a slow nod. It was a reasonable compromise. Gradually, Ibrahim Traoré began weaving threads of trust into Yusuf's wary heart. It became increasingly clear that Yusuf and his men had embarked on this desperate mission with passion, but not with meticulous planning. "We are diverting to Niger, not Mali," Yusuf relayed brusquely to the negotiator over the radio. "And we'll send a video to prove the children's safety." There was a pause. Surprise crackled through the negotiator's response. "I understand, but all our preparations were made for Mali." "Plans have changed," Yusuf retorted sharply. "We'll refuel in Niger and remain in the air until our demands are addressed." Trey leaned in and spoke softly beside Yusuf. "Now you should reassure the passengers. You don't want fear to ignite panic. Maybe distribute water, food, gestures of goodwill." Yusef pondered this counsel and agreed. He returned to the cabin and commanded 2 of his men to hand out water and snacks. Simultaneously, he ordered them to bring the children to the front to record the reassuring video. When Trey re-entered the cabin, the atmosphere struck him. A thick fog of fear clouded the passengers' faces. An elderly woman near him clutched his sleeve gently, her voice trembling. "What is happening, my son?" "Negotiations continue," Trey replied with a soothing cadence. "Do not be afraid. Things are moving towards a resolution." The children and their mothers gathered at the front of the plane. 6 little ones stood there, the youngest barely 3, the eldest perhaps 11. Their wide, tear-glossed eyes darted nervously. Their mothers whispered comforts into their ears, soft words struggling to dissolve their dread. Trey stepped forward and slowly knelt to meet them at eye level. His expression softened, and his voice dripped with gentle kindness. "Hello, my name is Ibrahim. What are your names?" Hesitantly, the children shared their names. Trey listened intently, a warm smile blooming for each one. "I know you're a little scared," he told them tenderly, "but you're going to be all right. Shall we play a little game? We're going to make a video to show that you're safe and well. That way, you'll be able to go home soon." His calm, trustworthy demeanor seemed to slowly melt the children's fear. Gradually, their tense shoulders lowered, their frightened breaths softened. Trey turned towards Yusuf. "It's vital to comfort them," he said quietly. "Frightened children and panicked mothers will only make everything unravel faster." Yusuf gave a thoughtful nod. "You've done this before, haven't you?" he asked, curiosity flickering. "I've had crisis management training," Trey admitted with honesty, though he carefully concealed the full weight of his identity. Under Trey's gentle guidance, the children smiled faintly and waved to the camera, repeating that they were safe and unharmed. The video was quickly sent to the negotiators on the ground. Hours dripped by like slow-moving molasses. The plane traced patient circles in Niger's skies as their fuel dwindled with every pass. Trey returned to Yusuf's side, voice grave. "Our fuel is running low. The moment for a decision draws near." A flicker of worry crept into Yusuf's features. "What will I do if they refuse our demands?" "Think," Trey urged gently, his gaze unwavering. "What is it that you truly want? The release of your brothers? Perhaps that's not realistic, but improved conditions for them. A fair trial, international oversight, these are things that can be won." Yusuf sank into contemplation, his brow furrowing deeply. "Perhaps you're right, but if I retreat now, it will all be for nothing." "No," Trey countered firmly. "This is not a retreat. It's a shift in strategy. It's choosing wisdom over stubbornness." At that moment, the French negotiator's voice crackled through the radio. "Yusuf, we have an update. A commission will be formed to examine the prisoner's conditions. Steps will be taken to ensure better treatment. Their immediate release, however, is not possible." Yusuf turned to Trey, doubt clouding his eyes. "What now?" "This is the beginning," Trey encouraged. "Now negotiate for a safe landing and the hostages' release." "What about us?" Yusuf's voice quivered, a crack revealing his youth and inexperience. "What will happen to us?" Trey had already discerned the truth. These were not hardened terrorists. They were impassioned young men driven by ideology, but unprepared for the full consequences. "If you resolve this peacefully, it will work in your favor during trial," Trey reassured him. "You haven't harmed anyone. You didn't shed blood. That matters." After hushed discussions among his group, Yusuf returned to the radio. "You promised a commission and improved conditions. Now let's talk about how we land safely." Relief softened the negotiator's tone. "Of course, you may land at Niamey Airport. Safety for all will be ensured." Trey quickly intervened. "Wait, if you land in Niamey, special forces will swarm the tarmac. It's too risky." "What do you suggest then?" Yusuf demanded. Land in Ouagadougou, Burkina Faso, Trey proposed steadily. There, negotiations can continue. It's neutral ground. Yusuf's eyes narrowed with suspicion. Why Burkina Faso? Isn't it under France's control? Trey's lips curled into a knowing smile. Not anymore. Burkina Faso now follows its own independent path. France's hand has weakened. As the plane approached Ouagadougou, Trey readied himself for the final act. Yusuf, he said carefully, when we land, forces will surround us. But if you surrender peacefully, you'll live, and you'll still have a chance to help your brothers. Yusuf breathed deeply and nodded. Let's land and release the hostages. The plane touched down. Special forces ringed the runway but held their positions. First, the children and elderly disembarked safely. I want to leave too, Trey told Yusuf calmly. Why? How can you help us now? Trey removed his cap and sunglasses, standing tall. Because I am Ibrahim Traoré, the president of Burkina Faso. Yusuf's face twisted from shock into disbelief and horror. Impossible. It's true, Trey replied with serene conviction. Now let me help you. Surrender peacefully and I guarantee your safety and a fair trial here. Yusuf's hand twitched toward his weapon. Maybe we should keep you as a hostage, he muttered. You could, Trey replied unfazed. I'd be the most valuable hostage imaginable. But think carefully. Outside Burkina Faso's special forces are waiting. If you harm a head of state, the consequences will be catastrophic. A long, charged silence settled. Slowly, Yusuf's hand dropped from his gun. What do you want us to do? Lay down your arms, release the hostages, and disembark peacefully with me. I give you my word. You'll not be harmed. Yusuf and his men exchanged glances before reluctantly complying. Trey led the way off the plane, Yusuf and his companions following closely behind. When Trey emerged, astonishment spread across the faces of the waiting officers. Sir, you were on the plane? One exclaimed. Yes, Trey responded calmly, and I've guaranteed these men's safety. They are surrendering peacefully. Hours later, Trey stood before the world in a press conference at the presidential palace. Today, he proclaimed with unwavering resolve, we witnessed the chasm between terrorism and diplomacy.